The absolute dishonesty and fraudulence of most corporate mainstream media is now common knowledge. The rise of alternative and independent media over the last 2 decades has facilitated a mass awakening of people to the fact that we are systematically lied to and programmed into believing a false version of reality via the modalities of religion, education, and mainstream media, all of which are controlled by a power elite via their various global intelligence networks. An important aspect into an individual's awakening to the true nature of our reality is their first step away from the mainstream media narrative and where they land.
What is the true story of humanity's history? It's very different from what we've been taught in school.
With over a decade as an independent investigative journalist, documentarian and author, moving in the world of alternative and independent media, and as co-founder and creative director of Conscious Consumer Network, I have personally encountered many individuals, groups and media outlets that put out sensationalistic false information. Whether or not they are aware, these purveyors of falsities are secretly serving the powers that be by continuously pumping confusing disinformation into the online world. We simply cannot create a better world on the back of lies. It is the drive to seek the truth and create a better world that motivates me to call out the scammers, frauds and charlatans that lie to and defraud vulnerable people with deliberately misleading information.
Corrupt politicians saying something, we need to be critical thinkers when anybody on either side of the fence says something to us, no matter how good it sounds to us. And that's what I find the problem is with truthers. What I call truthers is people who are awakened, is that we call ourselves critical thinkers. We know that the mainstream media is bullshitting us, feeding us a whole bunch of lies, that the politicians and our elected officials are scamming us. So we're critical thinkers that way. But when it comes to somebody on our side of the fence saying things to us or making claims, especially extravagant claims, well, also we just hang on to every word. Why? Because it's exactly what we want to hear, right?
Yeah.
We need to stop being that way. We need to be critical thinkers all the time on either side of the fence.
But you know, Kevin is a really good, he's really good with words, and he also plays on your emotions. That's another thing with him, you know. He does play on women's emotions, I can tell you that. And he reels us in with his, how destitute he is. That's how he reels us in.
I want to start by saying that my intention is just to bring light to something. You know, I'm not a real fan of defaming anybody. And there were good things that came out of the interactions in terms of being a catalyst and that kind of thing. The reason I'm here is because there were things going on that I think just people might want to check into first that were not quite right, that did hurt people. And, you know, I'm found him charming to an extent, but I'm a pretty discerning person. You know, it took us a while to figure out what was really going on because I think, you know, he's crafted something over a number of years and a method. And so that's what I picked up on the most was patterns and methods. And, you know, there is always a risk of speaking out about something like this because the personality types are sometimes, well, they're a little bit, they like to be destructive and they'll actually use that. So, yeah.
Just to quickly add to that, you know, Tony and I have been in the position where we've come across over the years a number of people. Tony's had his own radio show and media platform, and I've worked with at least 3,000 people, interviewed, run media shows. We still do a lot of media for different people, outsource our media skills, and run a TV network and different things. But what I've noticed is whether it's mainstream media or whether it's alternative media or independent media, It is a magnet for narcissists, self-aggrandizing narcissists who want to make a quick buck. And when it comes to alternative media, they're very quick to jump onto the bandwagon of humanitarianism. They use humanitarianism as a very thin pseudo veneer to mask a very dark and unattractive soul, an obnoxious person behind that. And they build this external locus of identity through media. And I mean, Tony and I could probably list at least a good handful of people who are like that and that we have ourselves exposed or spoken about or done shows about. There is no shortage of them. But I would say that Kevin Annett's up there with some of the worst of them, and he has caused a lot of harm to some very good people. I mean, since 2013, Tony and I have done a good few shows with people who've come on and shared their stories. Thousands and thousands of dollars have gone to him. And he's pulled every scam in the book, and he's capitalized off the suffering and misery of other people. One of the worst things, of course, being the residential school situation in Canada. I mean, that's where I first came to understand who this man really is. Someone posted his documentary film, Unrelentant, on my Facebook page. I watched it. At the time I was doing radio shows, and when I watched it, I was in tears. You know, broke my heart.
Same.
So I contacted him to talk to him because I thought, wow, this guy's doing such a great job. You know, he's exposing all this stuff. I'd never heard of this story before. What I didn't know was at the time, this wasn't his story. This is a story that's been ongoing for some time. What he had done is come along and, what is something that I can capitalize off people's, you know, suck well-meaning, empathic people into my circle of, vampirism to get the most out of them. And he capitalized on that issue. And of course, for someone like me who's an empath, I was sucked right in. I had invited the guy over to stay at my house. He flew from Canada to Holland, came and stayed at my house twice, okay? I looked after him, I fed him, we took him everywhere, organized speaking events for him, got donations for him, all that kind of thing. And by the time that he had left the second time, I realized something was wrong. And I've gone over the story many, many times before. It's been well-covered territory in previous shows. So this isn't my story. But I understand the anatomy and the psychopathy of this person now. I myself have grown over the years to be a more discerning, analytical person. At first, I thought that everybody who got involved with this kind of work was coming from a good place. And I was very naive. I've had, unfortunately, to learn that whether it's mainstream media or independent media, the psychopaths are just the same, and there are a number of them, sadly, and they do use and abuse good, kind people. And as Tony rightly mentioned, what that does is it actually creates a situation where good, kind, well-meaning people no longer want to do anything good, kind, and well-meaning, and they kind of get desensitized and put away and don't want to get involved with various projects because of the backlash or the hurt or the damage that's been done to them. They just don't want to go there anymore. So on that note, I guess it's probably good to kind of get an introduction from both of you. I think, Dayna, we'll start with you, and then we'll go on to you, Carla. I'm working left to right on my screen. And to give me a little bit of an introduction of who you are and how you kind of came to be on this journey talking about this information at this time.
Okay, so I am Dayna Furst, and I live in Greater Vancouver, BC. And basically, I'm an empath like you, Mel. And I am a very, very sensitive person. I've always kind of known that there was something wrong with this world when I was even a kid, but I never put two and two together until COVID broke out. When COVID broke out, I started learning. I started going down the rabbit holes. And I started even going down the rabbit holes of the child sex trafficking and the churches and everything. And then last summer, I met Kevin. It was late August, I believe, at the Vancouver Art Gallery, where he had just come from the island, and he was starting all over again. So at that point, we formed two separate assemblies, one in Vancouver and one in Fraser Valley. And he asked me to be the secretary on both. And we became very closely working together from the very beginning, like professional relationship, very, very close. We saw each other every week. I went to both meetings in Langley and Vancouver twice a week. kept all the notes. I was a secretary, met many people. 35 people showed up in Langley for the first meeting and about 15, 16 in Vancouver. And everything was great, He started talking about Republic of Kanata. We bought his books. And I fell in love with the idea of a republic. And that's what got me, because I knew this world was corrupt. And I knew there was no way to get out of this corruption. There's no fixing it. It is so far gone that the only way, I agreed with Kevin, the only way is to break out of that system, because one day it will crumble and we need to have a new foundation. And I fell in love with that idea. He taught me about common law. I got to give him that. And I just love the idea of common law and us being sovereign and making our own laws, creating our own assemblies nationwide. And so 6 months I did this with him. So that's my introduction. I don't know if you want me to say anything else right now, but that's how I basically had a really close professional relationship with him for 6 months. He's been to my place many times. We had meetings here many times. And it's huge disappointment. Very hurtful. Pretty good.
I'll come on to you now, Carla. I just want to say, Dayna, what you're describing there is the typical pattern. I was also a secretary for the ITCCS, the International Tribunal to Crimes for Church and State. He did the same thing to me. We had a very close working relationship, even though it was cross-continent. I was getting him established here in Europe, getting him to all these various different things. So I was also a jury on his tribunal where he somehow managed to create a verdict that convicted the Queen and the Pope of and handed them arrest warrants. He created these arrest warrants that it's a total joke, really, from courts in Brussels that did not exist. We personally went to the courts in Brussels to locate them after we smelt a rat, and they didn't exist. It was United Nations buildings at the address that he was giving. Okay, Carla, on to you.
Yeah, so a little bit about me. I have an extensive science background, 30 years in primarily physiology and nutrition. With an animal science degree, I focus on human physiology now, and I've been with an international health sciences company for 20 years. I have a wellness sanctuary acreage that's thriving right now because people are quite desperate, and do corporate wellness programs and things like that. So I don't consider myself, I feel like I'm a pretty solid person, and as Tony would say, a pretty good critical thinker. And I have another side to me that I didn't really understand maybe 10 years ago, and a strong spiritual side. So that will come up later because Kevin Annett actually asked me about that. So I found that was interesting. So how it came about to be in these circles is I was driving back from my parents' estate in eastern Saskatchewan, and I got a phone call from someone that I didn't know, and I'm not going to mention names as best I can, but this person said she knew a lot of people and she had noticed what I was doing, and hey, we should work together. And I said, okay, well, let's meet. And I said, I had been having meetings at the acreage for, since almost the beginning of the nonsense starting. So for sure by May. And I just felt, as I was assessing the situation and talking to various medical professionals and scientists throughout the world, and, what really is going on, and figuring out that, there was some truly, let's just say it, demonic stuff happening around the world. My analytical brain went into, okay, we got to find that first domino that we push, and it starts to dissolve this thing. So, I was pretty open to having a meeting because I was having meetings around, what are kids going to do, or what are parents going to do about putting their sons and daughters into school and the restrictions and the craziness there. And so having those kinds of people meet, and then, various people that I thought were leaders coming to, so to speak, a round table, which is a huge rectangular table in my situation. This was just another meeting, and what spun out of it, what budded quite quickly, was this whole concept of the common law, and that we could form these assemblies. And it was, Kevin Annett was brought in via Zoom to numbers of people here. He seemed to have a good story. He had some written materials. He seemed to have a method. The method appealed to me, that there was a process to follow, that we needed to work quite quickly, and that there was a bit of a plan already laid out that we could work with. So that was about August, and what quickly transpired was that the Greater Edmonton Common Law Assembly, what we fondly called GECLA, formed, and with some tremendous people. Shortly therein, we formed the roles, and I took the position of the chair, because I've done that for, let's just say, a number of years, various boards and lots of experience there. And, so various people stepped up to various functions where they felt like they were best. And we seem to have formed our charter members of 12 and got that going. But even from the beginning, reading some of the materials, felt many around the table commented that it seemed very controlling. Just the documentation itself, what we were signing. We did change it to some extent, but the theme sort of followed and actually got worse, that there was just a very controlling element in all of this paperwork. And, we never could we tried to remake some of the guiding documents, and we never did finish. It was just like, we would just sit there and go, whoa, this is kind of what we're trying to get away from. So, the good things that really did come out of that was, again, I think in these times, you are honing discernment. And so it was a tremendous job, one that I've never, ever experienced, to just keep this group moving forward with some really destructive forces that were within the group. When we sort of decided to part ways, that, you guys go and do you, and we'll continue on with the mission and the vision of the GECLA, then amazing. Like, I have so much respect for that core team. But I know that I'll be lifelong friends with them. And we've done some tremendous things. We started markets that to this day are flourishing, growing, giving people a place to go, for kids to be just running around and interacting, for commerce to happen more freely, and for ideas to be shared, and for things to then bud out of that. We've got Wild School, that it will be a new school system. We've got, tremendous, amazing things that are still happening, and we're very dedicated to continuing to foster that. We have ideas of how to go bigger with the common law, and have zero ego around that. I mean, for heaven's sakes, I didn't even know what it was until that process. So, I'm just feel like there is a place for it. We work within a system, and so we've also seen some places where it just doesn't work right now. So yeah, lots to learn and lots of opportunity for great people to come together all around the world like we are doing now. And so I'm pretty happy about that. I'm always like, the contrast that happens in our lives is really there for a purpose. And maybe, we did get slapped in the face and surprised by, someone that's well crafted in their game. But when you think about sort of the direction that some of us have taken and the things that have emerged out of it, contrast is there for extreme, awesome evolution. The bigger the contrast, the bigger the evolution. And I think that's what we're doing now. So I'm happy to be a part of it.
That's awesome, Carla. One of the things that I can draw commonality to is that through my experience with Kevin Annett, I learned what not to do. And that was pretty good in terms of learning what to do. And very much what you said, what he tried to do in terms of controlling things and various experiences I had were not that different to the structure we're trying to get away from, which is corruption, dishonesty, deceitfulness, usury, and where everything ends up in his pockets and everybody else is it's a one-way energetic system. There's no give back. And that's really what we got now with our existing, pyramidal control structure is, all the profits roll uphill, and we're trying to break away from that. And Kevin Annett certainly wasn't the solution to that problem because he was, in effect, just a mirror of it.
Yes, he was.
Yeah, and I don't know how that came to be, honestly, because maybe it did start from a place of good. I don't know. I just don't know enough about that. But I feel like you're right that there's an opportunistic element. What we experienced shortly after those first Zooms is that he just wouldn't show up. If there was anything contentious, like we had Chris James come on and he just wouldn't show up. Like he would just go AWOL, not respond to any emails or phone calls or anything. That definitely was, a DMO for him. And then it got more serious when he would plan these tours. And they were always kind of whirlwind, like I'm starting out now. And, I need money for tires. And thank goodness we had agreed as a team that we were very diligent to the penny with any donations. And, the people here have been very generous. And I remember a conversation around that. And he says, oh, yeah, the land of milk and honey. And he was trying to milk it, but we weren't, it was like, show us a receipt, show us something, right? And thank goodness, because he just wouldn't show. So I would, he proclaimed me this Alberta convener. And so I would arrange this tour, and I'm very proficient. So I would have 30 to 50 people ready to go in all kinds of locations throughout Alberta and have it planned out. And he would go completely AWOL. And then after, well, Dayna, you experienced it in that, he blamed it all on me. And I was frantic. Yeah. I was like, where is he? Why is he not answering anything? Like, it was crazy. So I said to him on that Zoom, like, you're destroying credibility, not only my credibility, but the credibility of doing anything good with people and for people. And he just laughed, like, I don't know, there was like almost a delight in it. Mm-hmm. So thank goodness we didn't send him any money.
Unfortunately, we donated over $2,000 to him at least over the last 6 months, just in Greater Vancouver.
Yeah. And I heard from others throughout the country, because when, I was planning one of the tours, because he didn't show up for, I think it was 3 tours. Mm-hmm. and I give people a chance. The excuses would roll, One was like he got detained in Edson, or I think it was Edson, he said, and he got transported back or escorted back, and none of the timelines make sense for that because he was on a Zoom shortly after, and I don't know, none of it made sense. But anyway, putting all the pieces together now, of course, hindsight's 2020. It's an interesting thing because he almost had this Jekyll and Hyde kind of thing going on. And you know, I guess if it's a sickness, I wouldn't wish that on anybody because there certainly is a lot to do, and you know, an intelligent person would certainly have an amazing role in these days, but there was just something not right going on there. And the other weird thing that I noticed was that he had so many emails and so many personas. And it took me a while to figure out who is this person that's emailing me. And there'd be long stories and about, you know, growing up and thing. And I'm like, okay, well, I don't really know who you are, but that was a nice story. And then I figured out it was him. Yeah, very, very weird. So I blocked a lot of
alter egos. Many alter egos.
And I just blocked one the other day.
This pattern, let me just tell you, first off, to give you what, 2013, he did the same thing. We organized events. He didn't show. I had people arriving at the venue and he wasn't there, right? Yes, multiple personalities. Jeremiah Jordan, one of them. George Dufort, another one. I don't know if you've come across those names.
No.
Okay. Well, he was using, when he came to stay with me, he had his own laptop, but one night he told me his laptop wasn't working. And so he decided to use my laptop. He asked me, and I never let anyone use it. I actually felt very put out, but I didn't know how to say no. So I let him use my laptop, and I didn't have a laptop to work with. I would just sit around waiting, twiddling my thumbs, waiting for him to finish. And then I was contacted by a gentleman called Ryan Elson, who had tracked the George Dufort character, which is Kevin Annett, to my IP address. And I only later on realized he'd been using my computer and my IP address to parade as one of his alter egos. And this George Dufort is also the same character who signed off on all of the arrest warrants from this illusory court in Brussels. So he creates a fake person to sign off on arrest warrants from a court that does not exist, that's supposed to be arresting the Queen and the Pope. That's pretty serious malfeasance as far as I'm concerned, especially an arrest warrant for the Queen or the Pope. Not particularly my favorite people, but the fact that he had the balls to do that shows a level of psychopathy that I have yet to find in many people. And what you're describing is a pattern of behavior that he has honed and he has perfected, and it's played out in many different circumstances. I was one iteration. There was an iteration of a group of people before me, a woman called Lydia Wyckoff, who that played out with several years before me. So he's done this again and again and again. Exactly what you've described there, Carla. This has happened so many times before with so many different groups of people. It's a pattern of behavior. And it's in a way very reassuring to sit here. And I hate to say reassuring because I'd hate to take a comfort at someone else's suffering, but to understand that it's not just me, that this pattern has happened to other people, and that he continues to do it, and that we can come together, put together the pieces and recognize this pattern, and hopefully, put this information out so that people can wake up and stop pandering to it. Because I don't know how, after all the exposés we did the last time, he was still able to come to another group. He seizes upon another situation. Okay, last time it was the children in the residential care homes. Now, COVID 2020, common law courts, the government's bad, this, that, blah, blah. Let's jump on this and let's make money. He's what I call disaster opportunist. Okay, when he makes money is when there is a disaster to be capitalized off.
Yeah.
Indeed.
Over to you.
Add to that, Mel, is I just looked up, because there was some really weird email names, like really weird. So one of them that he commonly used with me anyway was Angel Fire 101. So, but there was this one that, I don't even know how to say this. K-O-M Hin.
Oh, the native name.
Uiniali.
Yeah. Or, oh no, isn't that Scottish or Irish?
I don't know. A
background.
Caoimhin, and then the next name is UI, and then the next name is Niall. So, and that was the one that was sort of story-like, and you know, like he was, you know, a writer of Pioneer Times or something. I don't know. It was.
He's got about 10 different email accounts, at least.
Yeah. Wow.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, and the other thing was that, I mean, I think that people are fairly desperate at these times, and they're looking for a Messiah, and there's no Messiah. We are the heroes. Each person does their part, big, little, whatever. You do your part in areas that you can either pick up or you're strong in, and you stay true and honest, and this thing, we will win. But perhaps there's people, honestly, like he does say, that don't want us to win. And he often cited in his books, even The Art of Sun Tzu, which I don't know anything about any of this stuff. This was all a big learning curve for me. But I was like, I kept thinking to myself, I feel like he's applying that to us, like this war technique. I felt like he's applying it to us. And yeah, saying that, oh, that person within your group is black ops. And I was like, what is black ops? What is that even? And so then we got proclaimed, myself and this other lovely, lovely, credible person, were proclaimed black ops in that final meeting, where I guess I was bad cop, because I went in going, okay, I am so calling you out on some stuff. And then everybody sort of voted me off the island. I was fine with that, but some of my team stayed on and witnessed, again, they just saw a real psychosis there, and told me, and of course we have the recording. So I was really adamant it got recorded, because you don't know what's going to be used against you, right? So yeah, interesting times. I really haven't dealt with a whole lot of this kind of thing in my life. But I feel like it makes us just stronger. So we just keep moving on. We keep regrouping, and, you know, we've dissolved the Gekla, but not from a place of, you know, we carried on for months and months after that Zoom, Dayna, but we didn't dissolve from a place of defeat or anything like that. We dissolved from a place of, okay, we're a target, definitely, for still what I think is part of that same structure. And, you know, they're big into defaming. Like, they'll take something like, you know, I have a deep respect and appreciation for my late father. He did some amazing things, including, you know, I think he just knew some of the political environment as a pharmacist even, and someone that followed markets and just was very wise. So, you know, he had started buying land and talked to me when I was old enough, as we walked these beautiful hills and this 4.5 miles of waterfront that we still have, that people will need a place to come back to themselves. It'll need to be self-sustaining, off the grid, and blend in. So I never really had context in those days. You know, I think he started in the 70s. I think there was some stuff going on. And then in the 90s, he was kind of getting, it was like a centralization of dispensing of pharmaceuticals and things like that were going on, and he was trying to fight it. He was trying to protect people. And so anyway, the whole idea that they would defame someone that's just trying to do good is just bizarre to me. It isn't on this planet anymore to kind of defame me, to mudsling me. And I saw the same tactics. That's the thing. There is definite techniques being used. So, and not just by this one individual, I think by many. So, you know, when he would talk about black ops, he probably knew them so well because maybe, I don't know, is it conceivable that he actually is that? I don't know. I don't know enough about it.
I agree with that. I was also called Black Ops. Me and one of my close friends in our assembly, we ended up being Black Ops. But I think Kevin is a lot about the inversion, like the dark cabal that we're dealing with right now. They invert everything on us, and I think Kevin does the same. He's big on inversion. Yeah.
Well, and I don't think he's alone. I honestly don't think he's alone. Again, I'm not going to mention names, but there's, you know, I know that these people are still in contact and still follow him, and I see the posts and stuff. So, and I think that there, you know, one observation I had is the common denominator is a lot of these people are from the arts. So they're actors, they're artists and things like that. And, you know, maybe that is because they tend to be more dependent on the system, you know, for funding and things like that. But you know, I know that there is a lot of secret societies and things like that, and they teach them pretty interesting methods, I think. You'll never find a more transparent person than me. Like, you go onto my Facebook, there's just everything about me. I say what I think, and you're never going to doubt what's on Carla's mind at any time. You know, I'm that person that welcomes people into my home. Now, right now, it's kind of interesting times to be doing that. But I'm surrounded with amazing people. And that's going to be the key for everyone to do is find your people and form community. And, you know, everybody's got diverse skills and gifts that when you come together, beautiful things happen. And, you know, we kind of thought that was happening with the common law stuff.
Yeah.
And in fact, some really amazing things did happen. And even this break-off group, I wish them the best. And I don't care how you get it done. I mean, these days, you just need to try. And that was always our attitude. We don't know everything, but we will step up to the role. We will do our best to learn the material. We will do our best to decipher through it. But it seemed like every time we were making some really good progress. And it's interesting because we have some really good technical people as well that accelerated. I don't see companies form and do what we did that quickly at the time. So, you know, especially right now. So I think that every time we were getting close to something, oh, voila, there was some disruptive, weird thing. And they would use, you know, sort of infiltrating the meeting, going behind your back, kind of taking over the meeting. And then, you know, and so as a chair, you're like, okay, well, go in that other room if you're not finished this secret meeting you were having where some of us weren't invited. And then, oh, the blow up and oh my God, the name calling and the craziness. So, you know, I remember calling Kevin and going, what is this? Like, this is what happened. And he goes, oh, well, that's exactly the techniques they use. They implode from inside. Yeah. They befriend you. And then so he called them Black Ops. and then, you know, then of course I was called Black Ops. And then it was just nonsense that way.
I just wanted to interject on this Black Ops thing. I mean, my understanding of Black Ops is also referred to as COINTELPRO. It's people who are from within the system, who are directed and instructed to infiltrate and dismantle from within. Now, that's one thing Kevin is not. He's not Black Ops, because people like that are usually well-funded. They're usually well-organized. And, when I say well-organized, meaning you won't see inconsistencies with them as you do with Kevin, like him not showing up, because their objective is to dismantle, to destroy from within. That's what Black Ops do. And as I said, they're usually well-funded. Kevin is definitely not well-funded, because he relies on the donations for him to survive. Right? So he's not Black Ops. So that I discovered kind of like around 2 years into the, after I interviewed him on my show, because a lot of people thought he was COINTELPRO, and anyway, so no, he's not Black Ops. That I can pretty much assure. He is what I call a person who is an expert at doing the long con. As I mentioned to you, Dayna, before when we spoke on the phone. Okay. There's people who are scammers, which are in it for the immediate gratification, and then there's the long con. And he's very good at that. He's perfected it. He spends 95% of the time cultivating relationships, and only 5% of the time on the actual con itself, right? Mm-hmm. I've had dealings with people like that back in one of my previous careers. I'm very well versed, very well knowledgeable about how these people function, and that's exactly what Kevin Annett is. He fits that MO perfectly, and that's all I want to say.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, cultivating relationships. That's what he did with me for 6 months, and I fell for it, because he sat here in my apartment in meetings, almost in tears. Oh, I've been blacklisted. I can't get a job. I've been what did they call it when they fired him from the church in Port Alberni? Defrocked, couldn't get a job. Lost my family, my daughters. I have no home. I slept in my car, lived in my car for a while. And all this while, he's almost crying. And that's how he gets you, especially us women, because we're more emotional that way, right? And, from the very beginning, I did see all the rumors. I'm not stupid. Even though he called me an idiot in his last email, which was a conversation in his head between Carl Redvers and himself. I'm not stupid. I did my research. There are many websites out there, Stop Kevin Annett, genuinewitty.com, Victims of Rape by the ERCC, WordPress.com, Daily Motion. I have a list. Stop Kevin, Annett.weebly.com. So I've done my research. And believe me, we would go in these meetings, and many times we would ask him, Kevin, what about this? What about Port Alberni? Why did that assembly break up? Why did they burn your books? What happened in all these assemblies? What are these rumors about? And his answer would be, well, of course they're going to do that. We're trying to form a republic. They're trying to take us down. So of course they're going to do that. They're the Black Ops. And so we believed him, because we were so wanting this republic and this common law assembly. And we finally, when COVID broke out, you feel so alone. Your family disowns you. They all think you're crazy because you don't mask. You don't believe COVID it's a pandemic. So 3/4 of my family has disowned me, cast me aside, and then you finally find a group of people that you resonate with, that are like you, that are like-minded. And so we were so excited about that. And Kevin was our leader. He was our teacher. Not in my wildest dreams did I ever think I was being conned back then. I even went after these people, and I'm like, oh no, we're doing this with Kevin. We got the William Coombs Reclamation Day on the 10th year of his anniversary of his death. And we're going down to the churches, and we're going down to St. Paul's Hospital where William Coombs was murdered, and all these amazing events we were doing. And those events were, I believe, great. flag raising, it's on his YouTube channel. It was just amazing things where you have this gorgeous flag waving in the sun and you just feel so amazing. And we have wonderful people that I'm still in contact with. I mean, to tell you the truth, he sent out an email that I was Black Ops and a friend of mine who joined 2 weeks prior that she was Black Ops as well. And he actually accused her of being from the E department of the RCMP. So what is the E department? I don't know, some sort of investigative department, pulled that out of his head. And we were Black Ops. And then an email went out from Carl Redvers saying that all the cells, because we worked in cells, we didn't have an assembly, it was cells, just to keep us more compact and secure. And he said that all the cells are now dissolved and all our citizenships are revoked. And I'm here to tell you, Kevin, we are not dissolved. You don't have the power to dissolve us. We continue on. We have our cells. We have our assembly. We are continuing on. And I have a notebook of 100 contacts that he forwarded to me all over Greater Vancouver, and emailing every one of them saying, we're going on, we're continuing on, and this is who Kevin is. So I really believe I'm an empath. That's why I fell for it, like you, Carla, and I'm here just to speak from my heart. I don't want this interview to be construed as a vendetta or revenge, because Kevin did teach me a lot, but he cannot continue to do this to innocent people. I mean, he stole money from us. We went on murderbydecree.com, and on there he had his father, William Annett, send donations to William Annett in Florida. And I actually phoned him and I said, people are asking me, why is your father on your Murder by Decree website to donate to? And he goes, oh, really? That's still up there? Like just playing dumb, when we know he sent money to his father many times that we gave him, And, Kieran Buchanan, the national treasurer, now looking back, there's no Kieran Buchanan. This is all Kevin. I have 65 of his books in my apartment, about 6 big flags, the big 5 by 3 foot flags. I have about 90 little flags, handheld Republic of Kanata flags. I have 50 T-shirts. We all paid for this, our assembly. We paid for all this stuff. And Kevin would even keep the rest of the money. And now all the stuff is sitting here. And I don't know what to do with it. It's like a huge con man. I just see him now looking back as a man of huge contradictions. Like you said, Carla, huge contradictions. And burning bridges, like he literally burns bridges. And he's been doing this for years. Like you said, when did you first meet him, Tony? 2008?
I first met him in 2012 when I still had my radio show.
And even back then, you told me, he said to you he was the president of Republic of Kanata.
No, it was near the end of 2012 that he actually introduced the concept of Republic of Kanata.
Yeah.
When I met him, he was still dealing with the ITCCS. Right? To add to what I said earlier too, is like I met him face to face in, like I said in the interview I had with Mel at the New Westminster SkyTrain station. Somebody who is Black Ops would not be sitting there waiting for a ride. They'd have at least their own vehicle to travel. Mm-hmm. And this guy looked like he's sitting there, looked like he's living out of a suitcase, pretty much. Yeah.
He told you he was the president, right?
Talking about Kevin, just that there's no point. Like I'm listening to you ladies speak, and to me it's like a record that's been playing in my head since for the last 8 years, right?
Sorry about that, but
I understand. I'm not demeaning I'm not demeaning or discrediting anything you're saying. Just that it's like a nightmare that always won't stop. And it's like plays over.
And if I may add, the reason being is that he loves the attention and he builds it into his story. So he'll take this and this will be the next big part of his story, and people will eat it up for a while. So a few things that I just wrote down here is that a couple of things that I wouldn't mind bringing up is the Carl Redvers thing, is that this was the national secretary, and yet nobody could get him on the phone. Nobody could, he couldn't be on a Zoom. And that was one of the conveners tried very hard to get, when everything sort of imploded and he was called out, this Carl Redvers couldn't be on the same Zoom with Kevin. And it was always like, because, he's under the radar. And so we did some research, and there was no Carl Redvers, but there was an obituary for Carl Redvers that passed away in 2000 from Winnipeg in 2012 or something. I can't quite remember, but you might want to check into that. So another thing was that he specifically asked me if I did remote viewing. And I was like, don't really know what that is. But he was interested in if I had capabilities. And I said, well, a weird thing about me, I guess, would be that I have this science mind. So I research everything. Anything I feel worthy is of my time. But that I feel like people in general, humans, do have the ability to pick up things. And I've developed, what I guess is considered channeling or what have you. Picking up from collective conscience or our source or whatever it is, right? And so we did some of that. And for the most part, I do this, way of doing it that really just literally spells it out. And so just looking at my notes, because in trance, you need to either write it down or record it because you don't really necessarily remember it. It's sort of a hypnotic state. So on December 11th, I think it was, we were just like, it was after this sort of breakup time. And it said some weird things and we couldn't really figure it out. So Kevin resides nowhere on Earth. I don't really know if that's literal or that, he's just all these personas. I don't really know. Look over Carl Redvers' home down Outhouse. I mean, maybe somebody wants to go look there. Make no mistake, right now, and I said, do we need to help Kevin? Never make assumptions, be vigilant is what we got. And ask Carl Redvers could be Kevin, like right in plain writing. And it talks about some marks of the beast and some other things like that. And then it switched to more positive things about, what we could do. Freedom depends on being connected and such like that. Verification is important for mankind, things like that. So that was interesting. There was, I don't know if Dayna, you found that video where he covers his eye in an interview, talking about the masks, and he very did you find it? Is it weird or what?
It is creepy, like you said. Yeah, he just goes like this, and and there were times when his eyes go black. Like, I'm like, that's creepy. And actually, one time we had a Zoom meeting here with him in my place, and he came on, and he literally looked like dark, like some kind of a dark entity came over him. We have 2 psychics in our group. We many times joked we should call ourselves the Kanata Psychic Alliance because there's like a lot of psychics. We have a remote viewer in our group. And I'm telling you, as soon as he knows there's a remote viewer, he runs. He shut us down within 2 weeks when he found out a new remote viewer was coming on.
So that's why it started to get really weird right after he questioned me about that. And, that I, in confidence, told him I do have some, what I would consider strange capabilities. And I don't tell too many people, but
They're not strange, they're beautiful.
And so, that's when he was like, all of a sudden they had to be this tour. And all of a sudden he went AWOL, and all this kind of stuff started to happen after that. So, that's interesting. Also that I think that there was some dangerous initiatives that were being pushed beyond suggested. They were being pushed that if we didn't do them, there was going to be consequences. Either you were going to be, kicked out of the Kanata or whatever. We never did join the Republic, by the way. Something never felt right about it. And so as an assembly, we just never did. It was also interesting that, I have a lot of First Nations friends, and they just did not like the guy, didn't respect the guy, didn't really talk about the guy. But you'd think that somebody that was doing all of this, what appears to be amazing stuff to defend the First Nations people would, and they did not. So there was also
Carla.
when.
Yeah. I just want to say on the Native people real quick in Vancouver, when we did the William Coombs Memorial Day, a 10th anniversary of his death, this was just 3 weeks ago. We went down with Kevin to meet his Native allies downtown East Side on Hastings. We met Frank, he's known for years, and we were there asking them to come help us on that day, show up to the park when we reclaimed the park, William Coombs Memorial Park. Nobody showed up. None of his Native allies showed up. So he's full of it.
Yeah, and I think they just sensed that there was just, maybe word got around or what have you, but, I appreciate that wisdom, and that was a red flag for me. And then just all of these things just really quite added up. So again, some pretty awesome lessons, because these are tenuous times, and we do want to walk through life right now being alert, nimble, and discerning. And to do that, I always say, make sure you align yourself. Yes.
And I just jump in there quickly about the First Nations things. When I met him, obviously it was on the backstory of the Indian residential schools. And what I learned very quickly after falling out with him was that the natives didn't appreciate him because he had capitalized on their pain for his gain, given nothing back. He had gotten footage of their stories and their testimonies of what had happened to them in these schools and used it to make a documentary, which obviously he gained notoriety and stuff for. But really, it was all about him. It wasn't really about their story. That's and the number of Native people contacted me after I started interviewing Kevin, actually after I fell out with him, and things got very messy, because when the whole thing sort of came crumbling down and I did out him, he put out an article on his itccs.com website stating, or this is .org website, I think, that I was working for the Dutch Papal Nuncio, Andre Dupree, who was the Dutch Papal Nuncio to the Pope, that I was his operative. Now, bearing in mind that just 2 weeks before this, we had actually been going around to the Catholic churches in Holland. But we were going around to the Catholic churches handing out these papers about, crimen solicitationis, which is the church law which protects child raping priests. And we were giving out these little pamphlets that he had printed up. And it was interesting because we were the ones, my husband and I were the ones going up to people, and he was just standing back and filming all of this. And he was going to use all of this for his own public relations. These are my people doing my good work. But when it came down to it, he wouldn't actually do any of it himself. He just says, no, I've got to stand in the background because, and I'm marked and they know who I am and all this kind of thing. And You know, he's so important and he's so targeted. And that was one of the things that the more I saw people hitting out against him, the more I thought how credible he was. And then I realized that there was just too many people hitting out against him, and some really nice people as well, some really genuine, decent women who came with some, you know, very detailed stories, ugly stories of drug abuse, stories of sex with people in toilets and all sorts of things, which was tragic because when he came to stay with me, he brought along his wife, Carol. Carol is an actress. Carol also goes by the name Laurie. She has an alter ego too, and she's also been made some of his videos, introductions to his videos back then as Laurie. And I didn't know that they were the same person, but I eventually worked it out. You say he's got connection to actors and stuff like that. It's, you know, through his wife. I'm not sure if they're still together. I do remember when I met her, this is a woman who was suffering from depression, who was very, very unhappy. And I would be very surprised if they stayed together long term, to be honest with you. But I do think it was a rather codependent relationship. And yeah, it was a strange situation. But every time you talked about the progress made, every time progress was made as well, we noticed the pattern of disruption, like, and things would be formulated and then there would be disruption. There'd be groups put together and then there'd be disruption. There was a lot of that. And I also had to ask the question, is he black ops? But having had him in my house, I washed his clothes. I got to see, I mean, the holes in his clothes and stuff like that. I just don't believe someone who is working black ops would be that poorly attired. You know, he's just,
He
I
was
think he's a
poorly
grifter.
attired in Vancouver.
Wasn't he?
Yeah, he was.
He was.
He always wore black all the time.
And you can see it's like his clothes are very worn and stuff. I mean, I was literally washing his pants. And every item of clothing of his had holes in them, you know, just about, because I was washing and ironing and doing all of his stuff when he stayed with me. So I got to see the economics of his life. And that's why I felt sorry for him. I was like, wow, this guy's doing all this work and look, he's got nothing, you know, we got to help him. And I, you know, got him lots of donations, speaking events and things. And it's, then after doing all that and putting my neck on the line and getting all of my sort of collaborators and supporters involved with him in Holland, he then turned on me and made me out to be the big baddie. And I actually had a lot of people who also turned on me as a result. I mean, we never really made good, you know. After that, there was, I think, even if they thought he was not trustworthy, why would they trust me for bringing me into their lives to begin with and making them donate money to him? So, you know, it was real egg on my face as well. And that's the thing, is it creates a lot of destruction, a lot of pain, a lot of hurt. He uses and abuses people. And I can see Tony sitting there going, I've heard this story 1,000 times, because we're probably group number 100 that he's done this to. You know, and it's always the same.
How do we stop him? How do we stop him? I found, you know, somebody told me the only way is to sue him, civil lawsuit. I think that was you, Tony, but that was cost a lot of money.
If we're willing to put out the cash, which a suit like that could easily run 2-3 years to gather enough evidence, because he's very crafty. He destroyed anything, any evidence. For example, like you spoke of the ITCCS. Well, it is itccs.org, and it's been taken down. You think something as, you know, something works as good as that, it's supposed to be good, you know, so good for humanity, you definitely would not want to take something like that down. So that's a sign right there that everything he sells is pretty much BS.
Yeah.
But you can find it if you go through the web archives. I found it, you know, on the web archives, it's still there. But on the main web, you won't see it. So if you want to take him down through a civil case, it's going to cost a lot of money. You're looking at least 80,000 and up.
Wow.
At least, yeah, something like that. I wouldn't even bother to waste the energy on it. The only thing I would suggest is that, you know, talk to people about, you know, what to look for. So that, I mean, you guys right now, you two ladies, Dayna and Carla, you know, you're the wiser. You know what to look for now. You understand how he operates. But I want to say this not so much for you guys, but for the people who are going to be watching this expose to know how to discern, how to not fall victims to the likes of Kevin Annett. So I put together these little notes here that I want to share. One thing about people like Kevin, and he's not the only one. I've had dealings, I mentioned to you, Dayna, with other people that I've exposed on my show as well. Kevin Annett is not the only one, okay, doing stuff like that. There are several. And these people, they wait for a crisis, whether it's local or global, doesn't matter. They look for a crisis. They wait for it to come out. Why? Because it's a time of crisis when people are looking for answers. They're in a kind of state of panic. How is this happening to us? Why is this happening to us? We need answers. So that's when these guys surface, because they provide the answers in the form of, they say the words that exactly people will hang on to. That's what they want to hear. Okay? Whether there's any real meat and potato to those words, most of the time, none. Right? They will use truth. So the stuff he taught you guys about common law, that stuff is real for the most part. But his solutions will get you nowhere. The solutions will get you nowhere. I know, because we've covered that stuff on the common law on my show as well. I was actually partnered up with somebody who was supposed to be the guru on the topic, and he ended up being a charlatan, which I ended up exposing him as well. But here's the things I suggest for people listening, watching this show in the future. No matter what claims people like Kevin Annett put out there, always ask for the proof. Don't just take the word for it because it tends to resonate with you. See, these words that people say, it resonated with me. Those are dangerous words. It resonated with me. Well, anything you want to hear will resonate with you, right? Think about it. Anything that you actually want to hear is going to resonate with you because you want to hear that, right? So try to stay away from those stuff like that and just be more practical, be more logical. I know you women are more emotionally based and all that, but try to be more, how critical thinking involves a lot of evidence, a lot of proof. So anything they claim, say, great, sounds awesome. Where's the evidence? What do you back that up with? Okay. Ask questions, like if they claim the existence of an organization, especially one that's been around for years. Like he says his Republic of Kanata was founded in 2015, which is BS, was founded before that. The reason why he didn't want to go back to the original date, he didn't want you guys to see the connection to what we did when we exposed him back in 2012, right? He didn't want you to get to that. So he says 2015, because around 2015 when we basically let him go, and he crawled into his hole, and we let him go. We stopped talking about him, right? When I say talking about him, I mean exposing him. So when they claim there's an existence of an organization, especially one that's been around for years, ask, what has the organization accomplished? Show us the accomplishment. What has it done? Now, if you ask him that about Republic of Kanata, other than the documents and the books that he sells people for him to make money, he's got nothing accomplished. No legal fees, no precedents, nothing, right? He might quote some cases in case law, but if you do your homework, you'll find that none of that exists. And most likely you'll see, if you look at any of the legal documents he presents, you'll see discrepancies in that if you pay attention. Like when he was doing a video on the tribunal against the Pope and the Queen. So when he put out the verdict, I think you were still on his side at that time now. When he put out the verdict that they were found guilty by the ITCCS tribunal, he was showing the documents on camera, and I paid attention to the docket number. Now, case docket numbers are the same throughout the entire case. On the one document, he was showing the actual verdict. It had one docket number, and a couple of days later, he put out another YouTube video for the actual showing the document, which is the arrest warrant, signed by George DeFort, by the way, and that had a different docket number. And when I confronted him with that, he would not want to talk to me. He wanted nothing to do with it because he knew he was basically caught with his hand, caught lying. Anyway, so ask, what has the organization accomplished, and ask to see the proof of those accomplishments. Ask how many are involved. Is it a one-man show, like which usually is the case with him, or are there others involved? Are there officers? Is there a board or a committee of some kind? Ask to meet them in person. If not in person, ask to see them on Zoom. Which, like Carla mentioned, he tried many times to get this one person, I don't know who he was, on Zoom. He'd never meet it. Those right away should raise flags. When he says, I can't get them to come on Zoom, you need to walk away, okay? Is there an address, a headquarters of some kind? Investigate this. Make sure that address exists. Make sure that headquarters exists. Because a lot of people say, oh yeah, they got a place in this place, or they got an office here. They take that for granted. Like the people in the ITCCS, for the longest time, they believed there was a headquarters in Brussels. Nobody bothered to go check to us until Mel went and did it. Okay. Now, if there's money involved, how is the organization being funded? By whom? Ask for proof of whatever the claim is. Are there any membership fees being collected, or any donations being asked or being made? How are these collected? Again, ask for proof. Is there a trackable system of collection, or is it a simple donate button on some website? Okay. If the former, if there's a trackable system, ask for proof. Ask how is this money being administered and by whom? Is it a group that are accountable to the members for this money being collected, or is it just one person, as in his case? Because from my understanding, when it was at ITCCS, all the money being donated went to him or to his father down in Florida. Okay, so this thing about him and his father being involved, that's always been there from the beginning. Who are the beneficiaries? Who benefits from this money is being collected? What percentage of that is used for the person making these claims or the person asking for these donations? What about transparency? Do members get to see how these funds are being used or dispersed? Is that information, or is that information hidden from them? And when you ask about them, does he get defensive? Does the person get defensive? Does he start? You feel like he's like acting like a raccoon being back into a corner, kind of thing, right? Are there any measures put in place to ensure there would be no corruption, no collusion, no fraud? People who come up with viable solutions that are legitimate, they always have a transparency system there in place. Okay, so that, because usually projects like this, and we would be fools to think otherwise, projects always need to be funded, especially the global projects. So there's going to be a lot of money involved here. So if there's that kind of money we're talking about, those kind of sums of money, there has to be transparency. And any member of this organization or society or whatever it is, whatever it is, at any moment, someone should be able to log into a website or make a phone call or something and get all the numbers, how much came in, how much going out, where they go out, for what, and so on. If there's no system of transparency like this, it's a scam. It's a con job. Other signs to look for is inconsistencies in what the people behind it are claiming. Like when Kevin says something, one day he usually contradicts himself another day, right? So look for these inconsistencies. Don't just let them slip by, be fleeting, just because you want to hang on to this hope that he sold you on, kind of thing. This hope that he's got you intoxicated with. Do the actions back up the claims? With Kevin, you'll find out what he says and what he does never are consistent, right? He says he's going to serve the Queen back in 2012, 2013. He says he was going to go to Europe to serve the Queen and the Pope. He never did. He actually asked Lydia to do it for him. And she basically told him, what are you, nuts? I'm only here to pay for the trip, to support you, not to do the work for you, right? That's what she testified on my show. Do they become defensive or aggressive when confronted with difficult questions or when asked for proof of claim? And you notice Kevin always does. He always gets defensive whenever you back him, give him the hard questions, as you ladies experienced with him, right? Now, again, as I said, these list of questions or tips that I'm offering are not for you ladies. You guys learned this already, but more so for the people who in the future are going to be watching this expose so that they don't fall victims. Because what me and Mel have been finding is that through the different groups that have been conned by Kevin Annett, by the time they find out what he's like, it's usually too late. A lot of people have been hurt, right? So we need to make it so that people get, they're onto him before they get sucked in, before they start dishing out the money and the emotional investment and all that kind of stuff. Right? Anyway, that's it for me.
I just wanted to comment on something you said there, Tony. The thing about Kevin Annett, he's a con man, but he's a bad con man. He's lazy and inconsistent. A good con man would at least make sure, like, as Tony said, the dockets number are correct. He's just wants to make money, a quick buck as quickly as he can, and he can't be bothered to put too much effort into anything at all. And that plays out even in the actual construction of the web he weaves. It's a very poorly put together web. And you just have to start pulling at this tenuous threads of the web and the whole thing comes apart. It's not
just that he's lazy. You're right, he is somewhat lazy, but he also, his arrogance. He's arrogant enough to believe that he can outsmart people, that people are too dumb.
That's
right? Okay? That's how he thinks. But someone like, for example, like myself, I never fell victim to this BS. I picked up on it right away. Someone like Carla had, she sensed him out. People like that, he feels threatened by. Why? Because he cannot mentally overpower you or intellectually overpower you. Right? So that's why he feeds on the people who are just simply out there looking for the answer. And whatever solution they're given, it becomes like a drug for them. They take it in, and their everyday life becomes about that thing. I've seen groups who, they become consumed with the stuff that he sells them. Literally consumed. To the point where, like you said now, or you, Dayna, they get alienated by their families because they're so high on this hopium drug that Kevin Annett sold them. They become totally consumed. Their whole existence becomes about that, and they end up alienating themselves from their families, their friends, and so on. Okay. Now let me be clear here. The stuff that Kevin Annett teaches is not entirely all wrong, and that's what makes it so effective. A lot of stuff is true, but he definitely does not provide solutions. Okay. He doesn't provide solutions. The common law thing won't work.
Do you think?
Go ahead.
Tony, do you think that at some level he actually believes, what he's doing and saying to people because of all these
Absolutely
personas?
Absolutely not.
I mean, it must be hard to keep all that straight too.
I'll tell you why I don't believe that. Not one bit. Because someone who believes in what they're doing, they fight for what they're doing. Whether it's wrong or right, if they believe in it, they fight for it. When I confronted him at the SkyTrain station, when I first approached him, I was pleasant. I wasn't harsh or anything. I wasn't like rude or anything. At first, he thought I was one of his fans, and he was, I'll try to reenact the scene for you. He was sitting on a ledge, and I was standing about 4 feet away from him. He's sitting on a ledge and he's looking up at me. When I first approached him, he's looking up at me and he's like, wow, another one of my fans. He felt good about himself. He had a big smile on his face. The minute I told him my name, because when I introduced my show was we didn't use video back then, 2012. It was on the Block Talk Radio Network, which was Paul's show. So he never saw my face on the show. So when I told him my name, that I'm the one who interviewed you on my show, I'm the guy who you left in the middle of the show because the questions got hard, difficult. All of a sudden, his demeanor became like this. Literally, I'm not kidding. He would not look at me in the face anymore. He was looking left to right, because on both sides of the SkyTrain station is where he's expecting his wife to show up and drive up. So he's constantly looking to see, did the car arrive? Not 1 second, not one time after I told him who I was, that he was able to look at me in the face. Now, someone who believes in what they're doing, who truly believes, will be passionate about it. They look at you in the face and say, no, you're wrong about me. That's not what I'm doing. I'm legitimate. This is real stuff. Absolutely not. Do I think he believes the stuff? No. But I do think for a fact that he believes people who listen to him believe in that stuff.
I have to just come in there, Tony, and I say, I have to agree with you based on my own experience that he knows it's a lie and it's a con. And agreeing with what you're saying, that he would fight for it in a way with more integrity. When I eventually approached him about some of the things that had gone on. I mean, it's a huge, massive story from my side. He got ugly. I just think someone with integrity who's really standing up for a cause, there's a better way to deal with that. They normally do have a better way of dealing with that. But he knows that what he wants to do is try to, in that moment, cause as much insult to you as possible, project as much ugliness and nastiness to demean you as possible, because he's already lost. There's no point trying to win any further ground. And that's not the pattern of someone who's doing something he believes in. It's a con, it's a well-constructed con, and it's played out, the pattern of it, again and again and again with lots of different people. And no doubt in the future there'll be some other crisis that he capitalizes on with a new group of people, using the same old tactics. It's just the way he is.
And you know, Tony, I want to say,
I did notice his disrespects were quite, you know, he well crafts them. I think you can tell he delights in it. But Dayna, we have the recording of that last, and there was some, I mean, if you guys want to see ugly,
yeah, it gets ugly.
The Jekyll and Hyde thing, it definitely happened right before our eyes, and that was, I'm glad it was taped, so
I was
people
in
can have
shock.
a look at that and they can judge for themselves. But what were you going to say?
I was just going to say, Tony, that, you know, you got to be careful.
Now, isn't there somebody
that these people don't offer solutions, but Kevin did offer solutions to us. That's what was another way he tricked us. For example, I'll tell you about what we were working on just before this whole thing broke up. There's our national convener, our Ontario convener, Paul. He was practicing common law before he met Kevin, and he got pulled over on the highway, you know, on his truck, and they asked him for his driver's license. And many people, if you follow Christopher James, he has another contact, another Paul or Pablo, and he has a video on how you do not have to show your driver's license or registration when you get pulled over by the cops, because you are common law, you are a sovereign person standing on this land. So he's been practicing that. He showed his Republic of Kanata citizenship card, and because of that, they targeted him. The RCMP and the court system is very corrupt down there. And so he was targeted from that moment on. This was almost a year ago. And so when we got to know Paul with all this weekly convener Zoom meetings, he told us the story, and that a warrant for his arrest was issued because they were targeting him and he did not identify. There was another court Zoom call where he did not identify, which pissed him off even more. And then he was arrested on the street, pulled over. It was an unlawful arrest for his warrant. And he was pulled over. 7 cops came at him with guns pointed at his head, and they took him to jail in Durham, Ontario. He was held there for 72 hours. And when he was supposed to get out, they didn't let him out. They transferred him to Lindsay medium security prison, which is one of the most corrupt prisons in Canada. It's called Central East Correctional Center. And he was basically tortured there for 3 weeks, held in an isolation cell, told to drink water out of the toilet. He's a vegetarian. He was not given vegan food, or he's a vegan, and just inhumanely treated for 3 weeks. And we discussed all this with Paul every week. Even had special meetings where we were going to form a common law jury, our own common law jury, and we were going to go into our own common law court and fight these guys. So, I mean, this was Kevin's solution. So he did have solutions. He came forward and said, we're going to form our own common law jury. We need 20-some people. We're going to do this on March 22nd. And we had it planned out. Everything was planned out. And we was like, wow, Kevin knows how to do this. We're going to do this. We're going to and Paul did get out of prison 3 weeks later, but now he's back in prison again. He's been arrested again. And it's because he doesn't want to identify. He's actually given up possession of his birth certificate. So he's completely doing the common law sovereign man thing now. He's doing a plea of abatement, habeas corpus, everything in court. And Kevin supported this. He was like, let's do this. We're going to do this with our own common law court. And so we believed him because he was talking. He knows how to talk a good game. But when it came time to actually doing it, what happens? Everything blows up, and he completely abandoned Paul.
Okay,
Completely abandoned him.
Let me clarify something for you, Dayna. When I say he doesn't provide solutions, I didn't miss before that. I did say that he does tell truth. He does speak truth. What I'm talking about is the solutions that he's presenting won't work. They might work like, arbitrarily here and there. It all depends on the officer that pulls a person over, right? Most officers are not educated on common law. So most officers will look at you and say, I don't know what you're talking about. They arrest you, whatever, right? And then you have to battle in court. The reason why I say they don't work, they're not solutions, it's not because they're untrue. It's because you have to look at the big picture. With all due respect, I'm not trying to demean your knowledge, but you said that you started down this rabbit hole in the COVID story, right? I've been researching stuff since mid-90s. And one thing I realized that when you look at the big picture, we're dealing with a mafia mentality.
Yeah, I know.
The governments, do you think they don't know that what they're doing is illegal? They know what they're doing is illegal. They just don't care, right? Yeah. So we're dealing with criminal mentality here. If the mafia moves into your neighborhood and starts saying, you're going to pay me 10%, you're going to pay me 20% for protection, you can yell and scream as much as you want. I know my rights. This is illegal. They don't care. They're going to slap you around until you fall in line and pay. Right? Now, the government is not so overt with their intimidation. They do it in a roundabout way, in a covert way, or they drag you through the course and bleed you dry financially. Right? That system that he's introducing as a solution will not work in a grand scheme. Work for one or two individuals. Okay, I understand that, but it will not work on a global scale, or at least not on a national scale. Okay. The only way that system like that would work, that common law would work, is if you have critical mass, large groups of people. I'm talking large, implementing a solution. Then you might have some power there. But in small groups doing it, it's never going to get anywhere because remember, we're dealing with a mafia mentality. These elected officials, they know they're breaking our law. They know they're violating our rights. They're not stupid, but they don't care. And if somebody doesn't care they're violating your rights, why are they going to care when you sit there and make common law claims before them? You know what I'm saying?
I understand what you're saying, but we felt we needed to start somewhere.
Right.
So we're going to start with Paul's
you.
Case. Because, Christopher James has done that. He's done that with several people all over Canada. He's formed their own court of that person. So he's done it. So it wasn't like we were falling into this blindly. Christopher James has done this 3 or 4 times. And so we thought we got to start somewhere, right?
Common law is not the only solution. There's also a group of people that are a study group. They've been very successful in another area. I think we use equity, right?
That's what Paul's doing now, equity. Yeah.
Yeah. Which is basically what you do is you're petitioning the judge, you're presenting your affidavits and the evidence, and the judge makes a ruling on that. So it's not you're staying outside of the legal court system.
Yeah.
Right? The admiralty law system. So that actually has. Pardon?
Yeah. Sorry. I just wanted, before you get onto that, Tony, I wanted to talk about, you're talking about he wanted to set up common law courts, assemblies and hearings. Mm-hmm. He did that before, and I was a juror on that, okay? Me and a number of other people were approached to be jurors where he was running a trial against the Queen and the Pope. This is the thing, is that he then devised a verdict without anybody actually having come forward with their own verdict. There was no actual process whereby, okay, he's got this assembly of common law jurors now. He's put this together. He's got a number of people who've agreed to do stuff. But even if he did this, got a Zoom call together, showed evidence on share screen, had us all give our 2 cents worth as to what we thought, that would have been something. There was nothing. He got a whole bunch of people to agree to be juries, and then he made up his own verdict. It didn't matter what we said or did, and there was no actual trial. So Here's the thing. He doesn't own common law. He has appropriated common law. He has taken this as, he's jumped on it like the latest thing, made it his own, and doesn't even operate it ethically. He actually discredits common law completely. He's doing harm to the common law movement. There are people it does work for, but they follow due process. There's no due process with Kevin. Remember what I said, he's lazy and inconsistent. I gave a verdict, and several other people hadn't given a verdict, but then he comes up with a verdict, and all of a sudden there's arrest warrants. And then a friend of mine, Ailish de Avalon, who's actually in Australia, after he had given the arrest warrants for the Queen, he then asked Ailish to go and collect evidence for the Queen and the Pope. And Ailish says, but you've already given the verdict. Why would I still need to collect evidence if you've already had the court trial and you've already issued the arrest warrants? And this is the thing about him, right? Because he's now trying to rope in another empathic, sweet woman with money down in Australia into his little circles and making her feel important by making her feel like she's got to go get evidence. And that's how tangled it is. So common law, yeah, it's valid, and I've used it, and it's worked with certain things. It's not worked with other things. But nothing Kevin Annett does has any due process, has any follow-through, it's completely inconsistent. So even if it is a working concept and you can make it work, it's not going to work under the Kevin Annett aegis of common law. He's just appropriated, like he appropriated the Native Indian story, residential school story. He appropriates it for his own benefit. He appropriates whatever he thinks he can make work and sell to people to get money. Bottom line.
And the common law thing too as well, like, think about common law, where does that come from? Common law is the law of the people, right? Law of the land. And the only time common law wins is when you have the majority of people backing you up. Well, in Canada right now, most people support the current legal system, which is canon law or statutory law. When you have the majority of people supporting that system, common law is not going to work in your favor. At least not on a big scale. It might help the individuals. And those people, Chris, you mentioned, he knows his stuff. When he goes into court, he knows exactly what to say. He doesn't fall for the traps. The problem with what Kevin is teaching is that he gives you little pieces. He doesn't give you the full story. And then you go into court with those little pieces and they get you, they trap you in court. They actually get you to entrap yourself in court, right? Mm-hmm. Common law is not that simple. You really have to know it inside out. Now, I've been researching this stuff since the mid-90s, and I don't feel comfortable enough fighting a case in a common law court. I don't, to be honest with you, because I never focus on that one topic. My knowledge of what's going on in the world is a broad knowledge. I don't have any fixated or focused knowledge on any one topic. So for me, if I want to use common law, I'd have to go study a lot before I feel comfortable enough to go into court and win a case under common law. Okay, and that's what makes what he's teaching people dangerous. That's why I'm saying they're not solutions. They're like bits and pieces of truths that he uses to entrap people, so they start opening up their pocketbooks to him.
If I may offer something to add to that, Tony, is that we found that he was inconsistent. Sometimes it was really not common law at all, and we drew upon other experts, if you will. We found several people that seemed to be well versed in it from all over the place, that seemed to be applying it, and we gleaned. And I guess the most valuable part of that was what not to say, right from the get-go. If you're being pulled over or your house is being infiltrated by law enforcement or what have you, so some of the things to not say and what those words actually mean in maritime law. I mean, that was probably the most beneficial parts in terms of its practical application of court of law. I agree. I have had experience as People's Mackenzie friend. If you don't know, that's somebody that sits beside someone that is self-represented and is there for moral support and to keep them organized and that kind of thing. I've self-represented myself in court with success and things like that. So I'm not unfamiliar. I'm not by any means an expert, but I think that that's certainly a realm that you don't muck about half-assed, if you will. You need to know what you're doing, and or you can get yourself into some grave trouble. So and plus, because it's a game, and they know their game, like you're not going to know. So we even have common law experts or people that proclaim themselves common law experts here and do a lot of speaking and whatnot. But I can never find any proof of what they say they've done in a court of law. And, they also contradict themselves. And when it comes down to it and someone really needs help, they back away and they don't seem capable of helping that individual that truly does deserve some help. So, that tells me a lot, is that we could learn the common law and we could tread one foot on the dock, so to speak, and one foot in the boat. And we could do it more wisely and find those people within law that actually understand common law. Maybe they want to learn it. So, I see that the Justice Center for Constitutional Freedoms and entities like that, they're doing quite well for people. What gets me is that that's our tax money. And so the system loves it. I mean, they love it. Let's give out umpteen tickets for all this money, and then let's get people fighting it, and look at how much of taxpayer money we get. And then AHS completely waives all the tickets. They've made their money off of us, and people are raising money to fight these tickets, and it all goes into the system. And so that's what sort of drives me crazy with that whole thing, is that I think there's a role for it, but I think it's also part of their plan. So,
you hit the nail on the head.
Do I?
You hit the nail on the head.
That's right. Yeah. So
I
just don't see.
Go ahead. I
don't see one person as having all the answers. I don't see one person knowing all. I think that the benefit, but there is of bringing the different experts together. And but what I've noticed and observed is that ego is a huge player in this thing, and that this specific area tends to attract and bring a high level of ego and also of possession. And so that's just weird. When we're facing such important things, such grave things, that's just weird to me.
I agree. I mean, here we are all trying to be sovereign, and then we get this.
I find the approach of common law,
sovereign, or just freedom of choice, whatever you want to call it, just having lives that aren't adulterated by overreach of government, just simple things like not losing our businesses and, not being forced to put something into our bodies, which, I mean, gosh, the ingredients that they do declare are scary enough, let alone, you don't know what's in there. I know well enough from the pharmaceutical industry, given my background and my current role on this planet, that you could have anything in there. So let's just teach people how to get stronger and live healthy lives and get more together, get banded together so that we have that strength, and let's all get along, and weed out those ones that really are just in it for themselves. It doesn't seem to be, once you know what to watch for. So I appreciate all of you, because you all bring sort of that repertoire and experience forward, is that if we have strong leaders in place that have some experience in the area, and we know how to either move like water around the people that either want to scam or they want to stop us or what have you. And that, you know, I guess the reason my being on this Zoom with you is that I felt it was the right thing to do. I felt like, you know, could I move forward in my life purposefully and strong without dredging this up? Oh, certainly. Like, I'm a busy, busy woman. There's lots to do.
Very
Never ending, really. But I felt like it was the right thing to do because without the awareness, it slows everybody down. It does hurt people. And it's just a waste. It's a shame. So, you know, let's move forward powerfully.
Which is what I was saying to you the other day on the phone, Dayna, is that, you know, yes, it's important to expose people like Kevin Annett, but you can't fixate on, you can't make it your life's mission because, you know, let's focus. Right now, we have a bigger problem on Kevin Annett, a global problem, you know, COVID-19, and not so much COVID-19, what's coming as a result of COVID-19. What's coming is going to make COVID, what we've been through last year, be like a walk in the park. What's coming up in the near future here. We need to focus on solutions to make sure that humanity survives and thrives beyond all that. Focusing on Kevin Annett is, you know, I probably, if I was to use percentages, I'd say I'd give about 10% of my attention on Kevin Annett, what he's done, and 99% of my time focusing on the solution, right? Like what Carla said, let's move forward. Let's be like water and work around Kevin Annett and people like him. But I respect what you want to do, Dayna. I really, truly do. I respect your passion to want to stop people from being hurt with Kevin Annett, but don't make it your main focus.
I'm not. Like you say, I'm not. This is not an obsession. This is not a mission to hurt him or to, I know a lot of things about him personally, a lot. Because I worked with him one-on-one personally for 6 months. I know a lot of stuff about him, but I'm not going to say it because I'm not a vindictive person, you know? But I do know he's a deeply traumatized man. I've learned a lot of stuff about his past, about his life. And a person who is that deeply traumatized and who has never healed himself, I offered to give him healing sessions through a friend of mine, and he laughed at us. Basically. So here's a man who's got so many deep traumas that he doesn't want to heal. And, you know, we're trying to help you. We're trying to be your friends. And he calls us his common law family. Like, okay, your family now cast you aside because you don't believe the COVID crap. So now this is your new family. He called us. He's our new family. This is what he said. But I believe he's a man with a lot of traumas. And, you know, in his last email, he called me an idiot. Oh, what's the matter with Dayna? Has she not read the whistleblower book? Well, Kevin, I've read the whistleblower book. And, but I think he doesn't realize or doesn't want to admit that he's a man with so much darkness and trauma. And he is a narcissist because of that. And he's a dictator. Because the last protocols that Carl Redverse typed up on new citizenship said new citizens must pay dues, 5% of your monthly income or $100 a month to the assembly for operating expenses, which is okay. We need money for operating expenses. But he made it a protocol that this is what you must do to be a citizen. You must attend every meeting to be a citizen. You must recruit to be to remain a citizen, and you cannot take more than 30 days off unless you're ill to continue your citizenship. And these new protocols came out early March, and we were all sitting here with him telling him, Kevin, this is dictatorship. This is not being sovereign. Many of us need to be self-activated before we can commit to these citizenship protocols. And he became enraged, sat right there, red face, rolled up his sleeves, and went into battle. And that's when I saw the true Kevin for the first time 3 weeks ago. And he was like, I just want to say, he became He said, you think I'm harsh? You should see the National Council, how they're harsh. Well, the National Council is him because he's a dictator.
It doesn't exist. I think if you want to help with respect to Kevin Annett, just teach people how to be more critical thinkers. Just because the person's on the truth movement side of the fence, it doesn't mean they're on your side. Okay? Just because they're speaking bad against the people that you don't like, the people who are enslaving you, it doesn't mean they're on your side. So question everything. Just tell people, look, what have they said? Have you seen proof of that? Just teach them how to be more critical thinkers. Other than that, you can't be responsible for how people, for other people. If they want to fall victims to Kevin and the like, that's their choice. That's their lessons that they have to learn. Okay, that's all I'm gonna say. Anyway, I gotta get going. So, ladies, it's been a pleasure talking to you. Mel, thanks for having us on this call. And yeah, sayonara, and that's it for me.
Thanks, Tony.
All right, take care, guys.
Yeah, I mean, just to follow with what Dayna was saying and to finish that thought is that hurt, the saying goes, hurt people. And
yes.
So that's what we saw there is that the way to go forward is, focus on what you want, always switch it to what you want. Okay, I didn't like that. Now, what does that mean? How does that give me clarity as to what I want? And, go direct. I've always advocated always that the best policy is if you can't talk directly to the person, don't necessarily, and that was always the problem, is that there were all these players that now we know is the same person, but that you could not talk to them. And so Carl Redvers says this, or this person says this, and so I say go direct for a lot of reasons. Not going direct just creates, it's that whole miscommunication, the telephone game or what have you. But also that it's like hearsay is never the strongest thing to go with. So I know that there are more stories like ours. I witnessed it even in our small time, relatively small time together. But those are their stories to tell. And they're not dissimilar. Like I said before, there's definitely a daily method of operation, or DMO. So yeah, I appreciate you ladies, and I also need to go. So I will end there, and let's move forward. Let's move forward in positive ways. So, I think we have a lot of beautiful people that can do that, and some, many of us are still operating just maybe a little bit differently. So.
Oh yeah, we're operating too. We continue to liaise with Kootenays Common Law Assembly and Sunshine Coast. So we are continuing on, Kevin is wrong when he says that he's dissolved everything. He has no power to dissolve anything,
No,
he tries to act like he owns common law, and he always has done. When we set up our own common law websites, when we parted from him, he was furious as if he had some kind of ownership over common law. It's not his. He's just appropriated it. The simple fact is that we need to actually work with people who are not con artists, because you're never going to build a solid house on rocky foundations, That's just the bottom line. But ladies, it's been lovely to meet you both. Thank you so much for your information.
Oh, definitely.
Mel, if I could just offer one more piece of advice, one thing that was extremely important, very helpful throughout the whole process, is that you will be judged. It sounds surface, but you will be judged how you handle money. So that down to the penny, everything needs to be recorded, clean. We always signed any intake of money, any donations were counted right in front of everybody, signed by two people. Anything outgoing needed to be motioned and approved prior to. Eventually, when you get a pattern and you have some trust, you can establish, anything over $100, for example. But those sorts of things are key, because you will be judged by that. And also, you will also find that if you don't have some of these strong disciplines and skills, that it will come back to haunt you. It'll get more complicated and things like that. So you don't want something as easy really to manage as money to end up being something that's used against you. Very accountable, and let people see it. If you make decisions around money, they should never be hidden if they're good decisions, right?
Totally. In fact, Tony and I have done a lot of exposés on various people, and it always comes down to what have you done with all the donations? There should always be people who take in large amounts of donations for humanitarian work. They should actually have an accounting for it in a public place. They should, by law, actually, if they're taking in public funds, they should be accountable to the public. Put it onto the website. What are you spending that money on? Show the projects, the expenses, put it out there. The lack of transparency with money is normally the sword that most of these people fall on. We've had a few chats about online about a few people in the past who've done.
Mm-hmm. It's a good litmus test as well for those that you surround yourself with and that you have, say, on executives or boards or what have you. So it's always a good litmus test, and you can see how people conduct themselves by how transparent they are. So.
All right, ladies, let's leave it at that. It's been great to meet you both. Thank you so much for your information, and we'll hopefully speak soon.